Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
Mythic Championship 4, Barcelona, in the books.
See.
Oh, I see what you did there. That was good.
See, yeah, so Hogak, man, although I get it. I mean, okay, yep, there's only one Hogak deck in the top 8, and it didn't win. But I think this format has a problem, man. But there are a lot of crazy, awesome decks, and it'll be there's a lot to look at with regards to what the format will look like after they ban something else, you know?
I mean, they have to ban Hogak, right?
Okay, so even though only one deck in the top 8 was Hogak, first of all, the usual caveats about draft records. Second of all, if you look at the Hogak stuff, it's not just that Hogak was more than twice as popular as any other deck. You know, second place was Is It Phoenix, and it was more than twice as popular as Is It Phoenix. The win rate of Hogak compared to, and it's fine that the win rate is just like, out of any deck that was played by at least 2% of people, Hogak was the clear first place. The only other deck that did well among decks that were played at least 2% was Urza Thopter Sword, which actually did stellar. And we should definitely talk about that a fair bit more. That archetype did real well. But the other thing
in the top 8, as I recall.
Yeah. And the other thing is that even though Hogak, they're like, okay, Hogak had 98 players, but like 2 of the other most popular decks were Dredge with Hogak and Hogak Dredge.
I mean, what's the difference then?
Whoever cataloged them.
Ugh.
So altogether, 122 people played Hogak, making it nearly 3 times as popular as the next most popular deck. And notable. Oh, actually, I can tell you the difference between Dredge and Hogak Dredge. Like Dredge with Hogak and Hogak Dredge. Hogak Dredge was the winningest deck in the tournament, and Dredge Hogak was really bad. So I think they might have just divided all the Dredge decks between the ones with good win rates and the ones with bad win rates. Either way, if you put them all together, Hogak's win rate was so far and above everything else that got, let me see. What's a good way to put it? How about this? Here's another way to put it. Of all the players who went 8-2 or better in Modern, more than half of them were playing Hogak.
Well, I think that the fact that even if you just pretend that the 98 players playing Hogak at the top of that Spice page were the only Hogak players, and you don't count the fact that there were an additional 7 Hogak Dredge players at 60% win rate. I mean, if you just start with 98 players on Hogak, 48 players at the second most popular archetype with Is It Phoenix, and that the Hogak guys, 98 players, had a 56.2% win rate, which is not the best, but it is above 50%. I mean, that's kind of an odd overlap, right? That we don't see that very typically in formats that people would like to play in at another time.
No. Another thing you don't see very often in formats that people would like to play another time, Leyline of the Void, the most popular card in the format by a country mile.
Well, I mean, it's just it costs 0. It kind of shuts a deck down.
And then most of the rest of the top 10 list is the deck list for Hogak.
So I saw a tweet by Lishi Chan earlier this week, and I think that he had it right. Lee said, for sure you ban Hogak, right? That was a mistake, guys. All right, do that. But the real problem is you've got Hogak, and you've got open deck lists, and you've got the London Mulligan. Add that.
The London Mulligan is going to. The London Mulligan's going to be problems over and over and over again for powered formats.
But
doesn't make any sense.
London Mulligan and open deck lists and main deck ley lines because of the Hogaks is a skewer of a tournament. The critics skewered. The Hogak players sometimes skewered. The Leyline players bandwagoners.
All right, so Martin Mueller, the highest finishing Hogak player, playing a fairly straightforward example of the archetype. Notable inclusions: 2 main deck Leyline of the Voids, great with open deck lists. Obviously, the other 2 in the sideboard. Vengevine in the main deck, which was actually a divisive card. There were some people who were playing Crippling Chill instead, the people who had a little bit more of the dredge action.
Well,
and then 2 Assassin's Trophies main deck to destroy other people's Leyline of the Voids.
Yeah, it's solid. I think that's a good choice. Among other things.
What's up with Rotting Regisaur in the sideboard, by the way? I was hoping you could help fill me in on where you want that one.
So Rotting Regisaur's quote-unquote drawback is discarding a card, right? This is a deck that I think, not that anybody wants to discard cards from their hand to the graveyard so much, but like this deck isn't feeling it as badly as some other decks, right?
No, but I mean, it's like, why are you playing the card?
I assume it's a big, strong man.
Right, but like, are you boarding it in just against Graveyard Hate because it's like a combo of a different plan?
Well,
it's by itself. It's a plan. It's just where you don't have the graveyard anymore.
All right. So what if there's decks that are just going to go all in against your Hogak, like you said, right? So you got some maniacs, and their deck is like 4 Leyline, 4 Rest in Peace, 4 Tormod Script. You know, like you can imagine whatever schema I'm making up here, right? So he's got open deck lists. He looks across the table. He's like, all right, this guy is going to super overvalue a hand with these kind of cards. I wonder what happens when we have him play against Fair Magic. And, you know, regular creature removal is pretty bad against Bloodghast, Gravecrawler. I mean, it's not very good against Insolent Neonate, Satyr Wayfinder, and Vengevine. Like, you know, those guys that, like, normally, like, regular creature removal, like, bolt that. Actually, bolt's a bad example because Rotting Regisaur is so big. But, like, you know, some kind of cast that down or Tyrant Scorn it, whatever kind of point removal kind of things. Those cards are very bad against these kinds of creatures, right? I think
Tyrant Scorn. Yeah, okay, sure, keep going.
It's bad. They're bad.
Yeah, all the modern decks with Tyrant Scorn are probably going to board it out.
You know what I mean? Whatever kind of terror thing.
Although I don't know, dude, you can just bounce the Regisaur, man.
So I didn't want to say Path to Exile because Path to Exile is actually all right in some of these.
So, well, that's what I'm saying is that in reality, in Modern, people are playing Fatal Push, Assassin's Trophy, Terminate, and they all kill Rotting Regisaur. It's not just Path to Exile.
No. My point is Terminate, Fatal Push, etc. are pretty bad against Martin's creatures. You don't want to have Fatal Push against Bloodghast. It's a terrible fight.
Okay.
Right? So those cards are super de-emphasized, and you know, it gives them an open to get that Regisaur in against the opponent in a like de-emphasizing their fair removal strategy.
That's fair. That's fair. So this build of the deck, do you prefer this style versus? For instance, a good example of the, so part of the thing here is Mueller is not playing Altar of Dementia. Whereas, like, by contrast, if you look at, like, PV, for instance, PV did pretty well with a build using Hedron Crab, Altar of Dementia, Faithless Looting, Like, I guess everybody's using Faithless Looting. But basically, the only difference is PV's list had Hedron Crab and Altar of Dementia instead of Assassin's Trophy and Insolent Neonate.
So PV's pushing harder, right? He's pushing harder in his own direction. And there's probably... I don't think the Altar of Dementia is a very good kill card in this build, but it's there, right? It could happen.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also... It's good against Path to Exile, but it's also just a way to fill your own graveyard.
No, I think it's primarily there to push your own stuff. In this...
Oh, and he's got 2 altars instead of the 2 main deck Leylines.
Yeah, I think he's just pushing his own deck forward instead of potentially getting that opportunity to London Mulligan or take advantage of these open deck lists in the mirror match.
Reed Duke's version of Hogak was interesting. It's got the 3 main deck Leylines.
Yeah.
But then 2 Lotleth Troll and 2 Crypt Breaker.
So, Lotleth Troll, notable in that it is green.
Are you saying so that you can use it to pitch to Force of Vigor?
Yeah.
So Force of Vigor, destroy up to 2 target artifacts and/or enchantments, and if it's not your turn, you may exile a green card from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Yeah, it's kind of nice to be able to pitch, spell, kill, Leyline of the Void, go faster.
Yeah, and you just you don't miss a beat. Because this deck is, I mean, not a surprise. This deck isn't very good at playing fair, right? So... Getting 4 land in play to just cast your spells regular like is not what it's about. It's about free Leyline of the Void and free get rid of Leyline of the Void.
So they did really well with their list. There was a few of them on it, right? Like I think Corey Baumeister played the same list basically.
Yep.
And
triple Leyline main deck.
Yeah. Although both Paulo and Pardee did pretty well with their Altar of Dementia build. I guess, man. So the Dredge one, I guess, is a fair bit more different, right? Like
Roshan Epin's deck, are you saying?
Sure. He's an example of the archetype. He's got like 2 Narcomoebas, 3 Golgari Thugs, 4 Stinkweed Imps, 3 Prized Amalgams, 4 Crippling Chills, 4 Life from the Loam, 4 Cathartic Reunion, 2 Conflagrate, and just 3 Hogaks.
Yeah, so Hogak it's just a good card in this deck, right? Like, it's not all about Hogak. It's not all about getting the Vengevine triggers. It's just like, I think, is it fair to say this is kind of more of the traditional Dredge deck, but instead of like a big Golgari Grave Troll to kill the opponent, it has like a big Hogak to kill the opponent?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair.
Like you're just incidentally getting Hogak if you're just pushing with your Golgari Thugs and your Stinkweed Imps, and then it's pretty inexpensive to get out if you've got like Narcomoeba or like random guys like Bloodghast, etc. I've always really respected this archetype. I mean, when I say respected, I mean I hated playing against it at every iteration ever. The Life from the Loam gives the deck not only another Dredger in a universe where they sorely need things like Golgari Thug, but that's really the way that you stock up to make your Conflagrate big.
Makes sense.
And getting the Conflagrate's pretty simple, right? Because you're just dredging. You play it from your graveyard for 2 mana, and you just get whatever damage you're going to get in. You're going to get in, and then
Yeah, well, you get creeping chill to help with that.
Oh
too.
Yeah, that's a big game.
So, which of these 2 styles do you like more?
I like Hogak Dredge better for a couple reasons. One, obviously fewer people played Hogak Dredge, and it had the greater win percentage. So I'm thinking maybe in the context of this tournament, it was the superior deck. But second of all, I like the fact that it has like a diversified, non-interactive game plan. And the other thing is like, I think that the Hogak Dredge deck has a greater chance of just playing a legitimate game of Magic because of cards like Life from the Loam and like more regular removal, etc. Like you just play the regular metrics, like did I make my land drops, right? Did I draw extra cards, or is this a way that I can get resources ahead? Instead of like Hogak plays like this really tilted game of Magic, right? Which is
to say the least.
It's just like none of it's regular. It's just like I'm going to pitch my own stuff, and I'm not going to hit any of these land drops, but I'm going to have a giant 1919 guy. You can't stop me. Right? And I'm not going to pay any mana for my spells or for my sideboard cards. So, like, it's great when it comes together, right? And it came together a lot in this tournament. But it's also the kind of deck that if one or two even small things don't go for you, you're in a disproportionately bad situation. And I'm not saying that that's not potentially the case for the Hogak Dredge deck, but the Hogak Dredge deck, as long as this graveyard is not entirely shut down, because then you're not going to get that card advantage from Life from the Loam, is doing other things.
Yeah, okay.
And not for nothing, if somebody like locks you out with a bridge or whatever, it is pretty nice that you can just potentially still kill them with Creeping Chill and potentially Conflagrate.
I mean, you could do that with an Altar too, though, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a lot harder, I guess.
If you're PV, you can. I mean, but like without the 2/2 zombie tokens from the now banned 3-mana enchantment that nobody ever cast, I think that is much harder. It's certainly, like I said, it's a thing. It's possible. But I think that Roshan Ipin is much more likely to get his non-interactive kill-off than PV is.
So something I thought was interesting regarding the non-Hogak part of the field, the second most popular deck, Is It Phoenix, actually didn't perform that well.
I mean, it performed above 50%, didn't it?
Well, so first of all, for the second most popular deck to be just above 50%, it's okay, I guess. It's just not an impressive showing, and Mono Red Phoenix actually outperformed it. Out of the Is It Phoenix people, only one person even had a 6-4 or bet, like actual winning record with it. Like, just among the, I'm sorry, not a 6-4, an 8-2 or better. Out of the top tables, only one person had an 8-2 record. And that was Christoph Prinz playing 2 copies of Aria of Flame, 2 copies of Finale of Promise, and then 1 Lava Dart, 1 Magmatic Sinkhole, and 3 Surgicals.
Wow, the 3 Surgicals, that's like the ley lines in other people's decks, right? But it's like the ley line that can trigger your Arclight Phoenix. All right, here are my thoughts on Is It Phoenix. Not a fan of Is It Phoenix for this tournament. And the reason is, if you dial it back not very far, like, you got to go back 2 sets, right? Because this set was so influenced by Modern Horizons and Hogak. The previous set is so influenced by War of the Spark and Karn. But when Is It Phoenix was the consensus best deck in Modern amongst the pros, you had people siding in cards like Rest in Peace against it, right? Like, what were they doing? All right, second turn Rest in Peace. I mean, they would lose to a hard cast art like Phoenix, sure. The reality is, this is a deck that is also a Faithless Looting deck. This is a deck that's a graveyard deck with Arclight Phoenix. It is
Finale of Promise, too.
Yeah, it is drawing some splash damage from all the anti-Hogak. What makes this deck special is neutralized by accident. You don't even get the full value. So that's why I'm just not a fan of the deck for the tournament. It's not that it's a great archetype, no question. But it's just...
I think that's a great assessment. Because I think it's going to rise big time if and when Hogak is banned. Because it's a great deck. It's just wrong
absolutely.
Place, wrong time.
Yeah, you're just standing on the wrong street corner when, the bank gets robbed. And like, so, you're getting swept up in the chaos of all these ley lines. And it used to be like Surgical Extraction was the mirror tech, right? Now it's just, this is how I don't get slaughtered.
So is that why the highest finishing Phoenix deck, Juan Jose Rodriguez Lopez, a great example of the mono red variety that did perform a little bit better than Is It Phoenix and was the top performing Arclight Phoenix deck. A lot less vulnerable to graveyard hate, right? Like, this is basically if you squint, it's a mono red burn deck, right? Like, it's got 4 lava spikes, right?
Well, so you've got 4 Faithless Looting and 4 Arclight Phoenix, and
1 Finale's Promise too,
and like 4 Manamorphose, which is like a wink, right? I mean, Raptor remember he was playing Manamorphose and just regular red white burn before. So this deck, Phoenix is fine. Right, you get some
Lava Dart's a little bit of a weird card, right?
Well, Lava Dart was if you're Patrick Sullivan, you were a big fan of Lava Dart for Fairsies, but Lava Dart is a single spell. It's going to cost you your mountain, but it's 2 spells to trigger Arclight Phoenix
and Monastery Swiftspear.
Yep, certainly. So you get these draws with Monastery Swiftspear and Soulscar Mage that can draw off, like, Gut Shot is a 0, Lava Dart is a 1 and a 0, Manamorphose is a de facto 0. You're, like, very, very good at just attacking people. Also, you have these, like, weird cheap draws where you can just go, like, Swift Spear, Gut Shot, light up the stage pre-combat, like, stuff like that. That's pretty strong. This deck is, like, much more erratic than a regular mono red deck, but it has a payoff. If nobody is messing with your Phoenix portion of your deck, you have these, like, weird variance draws that, I drew my Faithless Looting, here comes Arclight Phoenix. Like, how devastating is that? You're like, first turn Swift Spear, get in for 1. Second turn, like, Faithless Looting, pitch Arclight Phoenix, cast some Lava Darts or a Gut Shot or so, and they're half their life total's gone already. And this is a deck with Lightning Bolt. Like, they can easily finish you off.
Yeah, 4 Lava Spike, 4 Lightning Bolt. It is a little wild, though, how little burn that they actually have.
Yeah, it's...
I guess Gut Shot and Lava Dart and all the cantrips, it adds up, but it's a little surprising to not see something else. I guess what else would you play?
Well, the deck is, like, cosplaying as a burn deck, right?
I see.
Like, it's not... Like, I hate to say real burn deck. I don't mean to be insulting to Mono Red Phoenix. I'm saying, like, the
traditional, a little bit more traditional of burn deck would be.
Their stuff all does 3, right? This deck has a lot of cards that only do 1. But the reason that they're effective in this deck is because they've got, like, not 8 but 9 prowess guys. That you can if you just stack together all these things that cost 1 or even 0, even if they're doing a little bit of damage. All that stuff adds up, and of course you just get the Super Phoenix variance draws. It's not nearly as good at those as blue red, right? Also, like, if you empty your hand, it's not coming back. Blue red just all their cards replace themselves, but this deck has much less exposure to graveyard hate, and it can win these kind of burn solitary draws. And the reality, Swift Spear and Soulscar, I've always said this. I said this first time, I think, when you had the best Modern Reckoner Worlds one year. Like, Monastery Swift Spear is the most underrated creature, I think, in the history of Magic. It's really good. It overperforms constantly, and nobody ever gives it credit for the great decks that it's in. Like, they think of this like, oh, this is like a dopey mono red beatdown card. Really? Its most impressive performances tend to be in decks with blue, tend to be stuff where it's exploiting other aspects of it than the fact that it's next to Goblin Guide. It's not even next to Goblin Guide here.
Yep. I can see that. When I think back to the number of places that Monastery Swift Spear has transcended archetype, where it's like, okay, here's a deck that has dragons in it, but it just has Monastery Swift Spear at the 1 because the card is so good.
Yeah, it's just like, if you draw multiple Monastery Swift Spears and then you draw like a handful of these, like, fast burn instants or cheap cards that are in this deck, like, you're just going to put somebody away like it was a regular offensive draw. It's going to feel like a Storm combo deck, right? But none of the things that they were siding against the Phoenix aspect of your deck are even going to be able to interact with that. Like, you don't bring in... It's not intuitive to bring in, like, engineered explosives against a Phoenix deck, right? You don't think about that, even though this deck has 8 1-drops.
That's not normally, yeah. I don't think that's normally how you would do it.
But, like, maybe it would be good, but a lot of the time...
Well, not all the mono red, the old style mono red, some of them weren't playing all these 1-drops. Some of them were just on Bedlam Revelers and Arclight Phoenixes.
Yeah, I think that...
or if they had Monastery Swiftspear, they maybe didn't have Soulscar Mage.
But this deck really, it can cosplay very convincingly as a beatdown deck. And I think that's one of the, it has like, it's multiple game plans. Because you can't underrate the fact that it's also like this Faithless Looting Manamorphose Phoenix deck. Like, I think it probably wins a lot of games like that as well. And not for nothing, there is one Blood Moon in the main deck. They're not the sideboard, right? Sometimes
switch it on them.
Sometimes
dude, you
just get
dude. Mulligan. Okay, so we would be remiss if we didn't switch gears to speak about Severin's championship previous level Tron.
What is interesting about this deck? It just doesn't even have...
Well, it's got several things that are interesting. The first part that's interesting is that it does not feature 4-drop Karn the Creator.
Yeah, that's the first thing I noticed as well. It doesn't
Which
have
gives
that
you
toolbox.
Yeah, instead, that way your sideboard has room for Thrag Tusks, Leyline of the Void, Dismember, Nature's Claim, lots of stuff. Emrakul the Promised End, Veil of Summer. There's actually almost no... in fact, there are 0 artifacts in the sideboard here. So you're getting a sideboard back by not having the combo, but part of it is that the combo's too slow for a format that's so warped around Hogak.
How great is Veil of Summer in this sideboard? I think that is going to be so industry standard in Modern, and like this is just the debut of the card. It's going to be great.
I think you're right. I think Veil of Summer is going to quietly sneak up on people, climbing the ranks more and more. Where, like a year from now, it'll just be accepted practice that, of course, people are just loading up on Veil of Summers.
Yeah, you're just gonna cast your like sweet permanent or whatever, and they're gonna cast their Cryptic Command, and you're just gonna smile. It's gonna be wonderful. Mm-hmm. So, not for nothing, this deck can actually cast Line of the Void, right? Because it's got all these chromatic stars and chromatic spheres. I don't think you want to do it that way. That sounds like a slow way to get there, but it can be done.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Only 2 Ugins, 2 Ulamogs, 4 Karn, but 3 Walking Ballista, a little extra action. That's a little bit more than we usually see. And an All Is Dust. All Is Dust instead of the 4th Oblivion Stone, and a 3rd Walking Ballista instead of the 8th Chromatic Cantrip.
I think that if you get the core engine right, and obviously this is a deck that's got 4 Ancient Stirrings, play them while you still can, friends. This card is still legal in Modern for now. 4 Ancient Stirrings, 4 Sylvan Scrying, and then the Tron and Sanctum of Ugin. All the stuff that you do with those cards afterwards is details, right? Like, obviously you're going to want to play 4 Karn Liberated. It's like the default payoff just because of its casting cost, right? Like, but not everybody plays 4 Wormcoil Engines.
No. Sometimes they go a little bigger, and I think that's the combination of 4 Wormcoil Engines and 3 Thrag Tusks in the sideboard. Makes Severin's list a little bit better against red aggro than some Tron decks.
Oh yeah, absolutely agree. I think that Wormcoil Engine is not difficult to cast in this deck. Thrag Tusk, you don't even have to have the Tron going to cast it reasonably. So the other thing that's funny is that this deck will often not even have a forest, even though it's the only kind of basic land that they have. But luckily, those chromatic spheres and stars can help you get where you need to get with that green mana.
Everybody always plays 1 Warping Whale. Walk me through. Where do you want the 1 Warping Whale, and is the 1 Warping Whale really worth it?
So, the Warping Whale is a counterspell, right? Like,
yeah, for sorceries.
That's good. I mean, if you want to stop a sorcery, like it's not even a particular sorcery. Right? Like, there are people who have big sorceries that they might want to cast, like, I don't know, like a Finale, And there's people who have sorceries that they want to cast, like that they need to kind of get their engine going. It's a nice little card to have in a pinch. I
guess that's what I'm wondering is who's got the sorcery you actually want to counter? Like, what is it? Really? Is it that good against them? I don't know.
I mean, you wouldn't want to counter a finale if you had the option?
I wouldn't want to board it in against a Phoenix deck, would I?
Maybe not. I think this is a hard way to kill a one toughness creature. Like,
yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe it's fine. I always wonder where you're boarding him in. I'm sure that there's the matchups and stuff for it. It's
also a ramp card.
Yeah, I know, but dude, you're not boarding it in for the ramp card. I'm not saying that I don't know what the card does. I'm just saying that I don't know where it does enough to warrant a sideboard slot, a precious sideboard slot.
Do you think that's weirder or less weird than the one spatial contortion?
Oh, I like the spatial contortion.
Yeah, but I mean, 1 and 1 is a little weird.
No, I don't know. I think they have such diminishing returns. I like one spatial contortion. I mean, just to mix it up, because I don't want to draw. Like, if you draw too many dismembers against some of the people, you can really take a beating in your life total.
Yep.
I'd rather draw one dismember, one spatial contortion in some metagames. That part, I don't mind that one. I just, I want to kill some creatures, and spatial contortion does a passable job.
So you were starting by talking about how the Hogak deck only put the one player into top 8. But I think that we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the fact that all these decks are playing 4+ sideboard cards that are just basically aimed at Hogak or Dredge decks, right? And that's not true for almost any other strategy, right? So the champ, Severin's got 4 copies of Leyline of the Void that he cannot easily cast. If you look at, a deck that's similar to that deck, which is Sean Gifford's Eldrazi-tron deck, in addition to 4 Leyline of the Voids, Sean has got a Tormod's Crypt and a Grafdigger's Cage in his sideboard. Obviously,
both of which are accessible
main deck
by Karn, the Great Creator.
Yeah, so that's why he's got them. But it doesn't change the fact that he could have 5 or 6 copies access in a sideboarded game. Right? He might leave one in the sideboard for Karn and then bring the other one in alongside the Leylines. Right? So almost all these decks, and I think it's weird because Martin is one of the few people who only has 2 Leyline of the Void in his sideboard, but that's because he had 2 in his main deck. Right? That's even more anti-Hogak, hate action.
Yeah, and I mean, both. So David Mines had a playset of Leylines to go, and then Zhang had a couple Leylines, and then rounded it out with enough Nile spell bombs to be even higher. The Manuel Wentz mixed it up with Leyline of the Void along with plenty of main deck access because of the whole Thopter Sword package, Grafdigger's Cage, being able to go find all that. This is just Graveyard Hate City, right? Mono Red Phoenix, no Leylines, but instead Ravenous Trap and Tormod's Crypt.
Yeah, so I think that if we contextualize the modern format right now, the thing that I would say is, yeah, there was only one Hogak in the top 8, but look what it took to make it so there was only one Hogak in the top 8.
Well, I think it's also just variance, because Hogak was by far the best deck. Its win rate was just crazy high, and whenever you have... if you just look at the top 8 records for people in Modern, when you look at the top 8 records for Modern, well, to begin with, the top 4 people were all Hogak. So if you literally just cut to top 8 based on Modern records only, then you'd have 5 Hogak decks. And if you look at the top 16, you'd have 10 Hogak decks.
That's
so, yeah. So based on Modern records, but anyway, touching bases with a couple more of these decks, I was a really big fan of the Jund decks.
Yeah, so talk to me about David Mines. There was a time that you a great theorist of Magic the Gathering had said to me that we would have a world where there were only 3 kinds of decks: Tectonic Edge decks, Jace the Mind Sculptor decks, and Bloodbraid Elf decks. Mine's made room for the one Bloodbraid Elf. How's that make sense? One?
Dude, I don't know about all this Tectonic Edge Bloodbraid Elf stuff, but I do know that there's more Bloodbraid Elves than Wild Nicottles, that's for sure. So I think Bloodbraid Elf, obviously it's a great card, but there's a couple things going on. The first is that Bloodbraid Elf is a little bit slow for the Hogak world. Second of all, blue control is not great at the moment.
Yeah, you think?
Or mid-range decks. Yeah.
Here comes all my stuff on turn 2.
Third, Wrenn and 6 is so busted that it really changes how you build this deck. This is actually a Wrenn and 6 deck. And as a result, you just have, like, for instance, there's no Dark Confidants here. And the mana curve of this deck is crazy low compared to Jund decks. You know, one Vraska Golgari Queen, I can't really speak to that one, but it is a good combo with Wrenn and 6. But one Vraska and one Bloodbraid Elf are the only 2 4-drops in the deck. 3 Tireless Trackers and 4 Lilianas are the only 3s. Everything else is a 0, a 1, or a 2. And then there's lots of little changes here because of Wrenn and 6. You know, there's a Baron Moor, Nurturing Peatland, Tranquil Thicket, and then a couple main deck surgicals are just a concession to the Hogak portion of the metagame. But part of the power of Wrenn and 6 is why you see just 3 Lightning Bolts, 2 Fatal Push, despite how fast this deck is. You're really using Wrenn and 6 a fair bit, even for removal, let alone as a powerful card draw engine. Just the 1-2 punch of Wrenn and 6 into Liliana is just so incredible.
Oh my gosh. The thing about Wrenn and 6 that is so cool is, like, it's such a powerful personal Howling Mine, if that's the way that you want to go with it. But it like invalidates Jund's previous personal Howling Mine on 2. Right? Like, that -1 ability.
It invalidates a lot of other things, too.
Messes up.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. But that's part of why we're not seeing, like for instance, who's playing humans? So many decks just got stomped on by some of the absurd Modern Horizons cards, where it's like, yeah, people used to play Merfolk, they used to play humans, they used to play spirits, but Modern Horizons had some absurd cards. And if you look at the top 8 of this tournament, a lot of these decks, 2 Wrenn and 6 decks, Nurza deck, a Hogak deck, it's just the effects of Modern Horizons were definitely not small.
I feel like if you look at this top 8, it just looks like a healthy format. If you just look at the top 8 without the context.
I guess, I don't know. When 1, 2, 3 is Tron, Hardened Scales, and then Eldrazi Tron, that's not like a great sign, but
yeah, but
I hear you.
Jund is a pretty.
You're saying just because there's yeah, but I think that Wrenn and 6 makes Jund a lot less healthy of a deck. Like, it's something different when Jund didn't used to just be non-creature Howling Mines, and so like changing it from Dark Confidant to Wrenn and 6, and moving away from Bloodbraid Elf to just play more cheap interaction, it's sort of something a little bit different.
It's like a blue deck almost, right?
Yeah, in a weird way. It's kind of causing a blurring together. But, yeah, I don't know. Zhang's deck, a little more traditional. I mean, it's still a Wrenn and 6 deck, of course, but he actually had 4 Bloodbraid Elves and a couple of Dark Confidants and even a Seasoned Pyromancer, so a lot healthier of a look.
Seasoned Pyromancer seems sweet in this Liliana the Veil deck.
It is at times. It's just not the best against the best decks. The card seems really powerful. Yeah, which I think is fine. It's just, definitely a little bit more Jund that we're used to. Instead of the whole surgical extraction Vraska component.
Well, you made note of David Mines playing a couple of main deck surgical extractions, but not for nothing. Mines had also 2 copies of Scavenging Ooze in his main deck, and Zhang Zhang had 3 copies of Scavenging Ooze in his main deck. Like, even this, like, the random ancillary card choices are very aware of what's going on in the format.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But, I mean, yeah, I wish there was more stuff like Scavenging Ooze going on and less Leyline of the Void, but...
It's too slow.
Yeah, it is. So this Urza deck, man... So Manuel Wentz was the top finisher with Urza, but this archetype did fantastic over the course of the weekend. So it's not like it's some crazy thing compared to the whole Urza Lord High Artificer, Goblin Engineer, Toolbox, setting up Thopter Sword. We talked about this deck when Urza first hit. It's looked real good in the current format, and I'm wondering how much do you think it's because of the access to main deck, lots of ways to go find your Grafdigger's Cage and multiple Nile spell bombs, because you got stuff like War of Invention and so on, versus how much is just such a powerful baseline game plan versus how much is Lentz's updated technology of Teferi Time Raveler.
I actually think that it's something completely different from those things.
So, oh, yeah?
Yeah, so obviously the ability to access Nile Spellbomb and Grafdigger's Cage in Game 1, especially with like War of Invention, which that's super cheap to get some of those cards in a deck with this structure. That's great, right? Open deck lists, you're gonna know when to push in which direction if you've got a window. That's cool, and that's certainly going to win some free Game 1s. But I think that the bigger thing is that this deck, it doesn't even have to win all the way. It just gets into an actual game-winning position contextually in the format even faster than Hogak sometimes, right? Like, if you're just, like, Thopter Swording them, you don't have to go all the way with Thopter Sword, right? You can just be like, I'm just going to do this thing. I've got, like, a 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature token, and not infinite mana yet. What are you going to do about it? Like, that, I'm gaining a little life, and you're not dealing a lot of damage to me. That buys time. And then when the deck wants to go off, this deck's big is much bigger than Hogak's big.
If they don't mill you out.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like we're not talking about giving him like 7 turns. Like, you don't need that much time, do you?
No, I mean, this deck can win on turn 4 if it needs to.
Yeah, it's
sometimes later, but it's fast because Goblin Engineer going and getting the sword and putting it in your graveyard right where you want it, that's a lot of consistency and speeds it up compared to previous ways to tutor up the combo. When you have Thopter Sword, Urza, you win on the spot, right? I mean, you literally get to win that same turn. You make as many Thopters as you want, as much mana as you want, gain as much life as you want, and you get to Temporal Aperture and play as many cards off your deck as you want. And so then you can eventually just play every card in your deck that you want to and completely lock your opponent out. I mean, you can play Spine of Ishsa as much as you want, destroy all their permanents, and it's. I mean, in theory, you could even win turn 3, right? It just never really comes up. If you had a Mox Opal, like if you have some weird Mox Opal Arkham's Astrolabe draw, so that you can just like play Mind Stone on turn 2, and then on turn 1, I mean, and then on turn 2 play Goblin Engineer and Thopter Foundry, and then on turn 3 play Urza and you win. But that's quite the parlay.
It's fast, but it's in the range.
Oh yeah.
The other thing is, what is this deck even afraid of? Right? Like, it's not afraid of a whole lot. Okay.
Well, Stony Silence is pretty strong.
And yet, here we have cards like Teferi Time Raveler, which can open up a window against Stony Silence, against Rest in Peace, against Leyline of the Void, whatever you were going to use to try to shut this deck down. It's not a permanent solution. Doesn't have to be. Like you said.
Oh, yeah. When you bounce Leyline of the Void, you've done a lot more than slow him down.
Yeah, you probably got him now, right?
Well, plus, they can't always just replay the Leyline.
Well, I mean, if they've got a bunch of chromatic stars and spheres like the champ, they can.
Yeah, in general, I think the Teferi here is such a nice addition for this metagame. I think it's just real smart.
Yeah, I think this was probably the deck of the tournament for me. It's got a great win rate. It's got a novel end game. See, tell me this, Patrick. Why is this kind of a deck not bother us? Like, you look at this.
Yeah, it was only popularity.
Yeah?
It was only popularity. Yeah, if this deck was as popular as the Hogak decks,
it'd be a problem instead.
Yeah, and it might be a problem after Hogak is banned. Like, it's to me, the best deck of the tournament was the Hogak Dredge deck. It was just so dominating. But, like, I think that the Urza deck, the only reason that we're giving it extra credit is because we desperately want something else because it just gets boring talking about Hogak all the time.
Yeah, because I look at this and I'm just like, there's no reason why this deck isn't an abusive kind of a deck the same way that Hogak or Hogak Dredge is, other than the fact that in my imagination, it's more elegant to put together Thopter Sword than it is to dump stuff out.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
You know it's not.
That's why I asked the question.
Yep. In your heart of hearts, you know that when there are 10,000 people rooting for Tron round after round, that's a sign that there's a villain. You know what I mean? Like, there's a true villain. When Reed Duke registers Hogak,
Hogak is a black and green deck. That's what he does.
Okay, dude.
I know.
So what did you think of the I mean, he didn't quite make top 8, but a couple people actually did well with this blue-white deck. Arnold Hockmiller and Kowalski, both playing blue-white. The whole Jason Mind Sculptor, Narset, Teferi Time Raveler, Teferi Hero Dominaria deck.
Yeah. I think that it is like I've seen a lot of people talk about like how this is blue white's time, right? We've also seen in some other tournaments that came before this Mythic Championship, blue white excelling. These particular decks didn't actually make the top 8, but they did perform real well in the Swiss, and they have like. Rest in Peace × 4 in the sideboard. I'm actually surprised that they didn't stretch at all in the main deck for anti-graveyard.
Oh yeah, Kowalski had two surgicals. I mean,
okay.
Which is at least something, you know.
I guess they have like Force of Negation. Right?
Yeah, that's part of it. 3 Force of Negations. It's not great to force a negation of Faithless Looting, but at least you get to exile it.
Yeah. You stop him from the flashback. But the thing is, like, also, blue-white, if it's not dead, is pretty good at catching up. Right? Like, Supreme Verdict is a good catch-up card. Timely Reinforcements is a good catch-up card. So, if you live long enough, and you construct your deck in a way to live long enough, you actually put yourself in a position where your stuff is better than theirs. Right? Like, I think there's a thing there.
I do love Monastery Mentor. So my biggest problem with this deck is that it's not very good.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like, It had an atrocious win rate. It was the losingest among the popular decks. It was the losingest.
46%, 47% maybe. Yeah,
just under. Yep, and it was not successful. I think in large part because the Hogak matchup doesn't really work. Like, you don't always have rest in peace in time. And it's just a little underpowered compared to how busted Ren. Like, you're not beating a Ren in 6 with this deck.
I don't even know what you can do about a Ren in 6 attack.
Force of Negation, Spell Snare.
Just get in there or just rumble. Although Ren in 6 can kill a Snapcaster Mage. Right? Like,
yeah.
Pew, pew,
or a
pew.
Vendilion Click.
Yeah. How about Geyer, Reach, Sanitarium, and Kowalski's deck? That's hot.
Why?
That is a hottie. I don't even know why.
Get out of
Player
here.
draws a card and discards a card? Like, you let them
Dude,
do that
control.
also? You're
out of control.
I'm not the one who picked it. I think that I don't know. I think the card is exciting. I don't.
It is exciting.
I don't know why you would play it in a.
How about this? Big if
decks.
true. Geyer Reach Sanitarium is good. Big if true. If true.
I'm just saying. You said that Hogak Dredge is the deck of the tournament. This seems like an insane card to me to play in a room where that is a true statement. Both players draw and discard.
Sure, we'll just go from here.
I'll discard this uncastable, and I'll draw, in quotes, my Stinkweed Imp. How's that working for you?
Nice.
I'll discard my Bloodghast.
Since every other person was just playing Hogak, or like everybody was just basically Hogak with a little bit of Phoenix, Tron, and Jund. But there's one other deck that put up an 8-2 record, and that's Dave Napolitano's Humans list with 2 Ranger Captain of Eos, the Miser's Dauntless Bodyguard. Notably, not a lot of graveyard hate. A couple Grafdigger's Cages, but for the most part, just taking that one on the chin.
Like, not even an Onofenza, right?
No.
I mean, first of all, Dave had an outstanding record. Must have been doing something right.
Yeah. I also thought that enough people were not focused on humans. You know, it sucks every time you run into the Jund people who just run and 6 you into next Tuesday. Or if you run into some blue-white deck with Supreme Verdicts or whatever. But, like, if you're just going to be playing against Phoenix and Thopter Sword, you could do worse. Do you really beat Hogak enough to not want graveyard hate, or are you just taking that one, like, you're just not trying?
Well,
because maybe you're fast. Maybe you're fast enough. I don't know.
Well, it's like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess you have Reflector Mage.
Enough. I don't know, man. Doesn't seem fast enough to me.
It's just, yeah. I mean, even the cards that you have that are interactive cards, like, don't even interact with their cards really, right? Like, Thalia's going to stop them.
I bet you beat the hell out of the Izzet Phoenix decks, and you're probably okay against Grixis Thopter Sword.
Why do you think you beat the hell out of Phoenix? Because of Thalia?
You have to beat the hell out of somebody. I mean, and almost every other deck seems like it would crush humans.
Yeah, I mean, this deck is not good against Thing in the Ice. It's not good. First of all, this deck has almost no tricks. Its only trick is Aether Vial. It basically just puts a bunch of stuff in play, right? And they're like, I'm going to make a giant horror, and I'm going to bounce all that stuff. And if you're really lucky, I'm going to haste you to death while you're tapped out next turn.
So I played against humans in London when I and don't tell anybody I told you this, but I played Tron, and
What?
I'm not proud of it. But I played against humans, and their strategy seemed weak against Ugin. Like, I just put down Ugin.
You think?
Yeah.
Is it Ugin's minus ability? Just destroy colorful cards? You left the Aether Vial, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And then from there, the +2, like Ugin, like dealing 3 a turn, that was sufficient for all the threats that they were able to, levy beyond that point.
Interestingly, 3 is the biggest guy that they have. They don't have any guys bigger than 3.
Yeah.
My understanding is that the humans players think that they're on the right side of that matchup, and the Tron players think that they're on the right side of that matchup.
All I'm saying is that I had to face a lot of dampening spheres, and I just powered through it. And this isn't 2 is not exactly a lot of dampening spheres.
Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't have to face Deputy Detention, though. Deputy Detention seems really smart. I like that. That's a nice little twist. Yeah.
I mean, it's just like more Reflector Mages, right? Like, and it's good against 2/1s. Real good against 2/1s. It's good against guys that come back from the graveyard.
Yeah.
That's all right. However, I feel like you just get behind and you're not catching up in time.
All right, man. So, looking at the format as a whole, first of all, is there any other option? Like, some people talk about just faithless looting. Is banning faithless looting enough? Like, if you ban faithless looting, first of all, you help preemptively limit these Phoenix decks, right? But if you ban faithless looting, are you even doing anything? I mean, is that enough?
Certainly doing something.
You're certainly doing something. Is that meaningful enough? Do you think, is there any way you can let Hogak live and faithless looting take the hit? Or do you think that's just not going to be enough?
I think this is that. You remember that day when they banned Tree of Tales? When they banned Ancient Den? Who did Tree of Tales ever hurt? Tree of Tales' entire job description was tapping for Oxidize, and you're going to ban him? Yeah. I think you have to come down hard. Because to me, the most important thing, if a ban is going to occur in Modern, is that you leave a Modern that is the Modern that the average player loves to play. Because people love to play Modern. This isn't the most popular Mythic Championship / Pro Tour format, but people love it. They travel long distances to dust off the cards that they've owned for years. And I think it's important to leave them with a format they're going to want to play. I think that if it were entirely up to me, I would ban both Faithless Looting and Hogak. And just based on this conversation that you and I have been having, I'd have to take a long, hard look at what I would do to prevent Urza Thopter Sword from just being the next Hogak. I don't
think it's at risk of being the next Hogak. It might end up being the best deck and be better than people have an appetite for, but it's not the same sort of busted as Hogak. Like, everyone points at Hogak. Everyone's using a third of their sideboard against Hogak, and Hogak was by far the best deck. I think that if you try to beat this Thopter Sword deck, if this was public enemy number 1, this deck does not want to face Stony Silence. And maybe you want to do something about it. It's not like this is a healthy play pattern. But I think if you did something about this deck, first of all, at the end of the day, you can just ban Sword of the Meek again. That is the thing, right?
Yeah, this deck becomes, Urza becomes wildly less exciting once you do that.
Now, if you didn't want to, I don't think you want to ban Goblin Engineer or Urza. Those 2 cards are sweet and promote cool things. If you really wanted to just slow this deck down, at the end of the day, I think the real answer is inevitably, eventually, Mox Opal. Mox Opal is a busted card. It's just that sometimes there's other busted stuff.
Like, how long are we going to let Ancient Stirrings live? If you're going to take out Faithless Looting, do you take out Ancient Stirrings at the same time?
I'm into it. ban Ancient Stirrings, Mox Opal, Faithless Looting, Hogak, and nobody will be on board with this. But honestly, I think Ren and 6 is going to be a problem eventually.
No way.
We don't have to do anything about it now. I'm telling you, I think it's going to be a problem eventually. How about this? Ban things until Ren and 6 is the best, and then ban Ren and 6 and stop.
Okay. A lot to unpack there. I think of Urza Thopter Sword as being cousins, at least, with Blue-Red Storm, right? Like, it's a very different deck, obviously. But they're like cousins. Like, they've got some wizards. They've got blue wizards. They got red wizards. They do combo-ish stuff, and they've got, steam vents in common, right? I have never at any point had a problem with Blue-Red Storm's power level. And it is a faster deck, oftentimes, in some of the decks we've been discussing today. I have no problem with a deck at that power level, that speed, that level of being interacted with. I think that Urza's Thopter Sword exceeds that. I'm thinking, like, what is there about this that makes it so different? That's one thing. Secondly,
Urza and Goblin Engineer are two exceptionally powerful cards that took a fringe strategy, because this deck's been climbing, right? Like, Whir of Invention. So basically, ever since Sword of the Meek was unbanned, it was a whole thing. And then Whir of Invention really escalated the strength of this deck. But Goblin Engineer and Urza Lord High Artificer completely mutated this deck into some freakish monster that's so fast, but just has these combo cards that make them both fast and powerful. Both Goblin Engineer and Urza are really powerful backup plans. And that's okay. That's not necessarily a problem, but I think it helps expose the deep-rooted problem underneath, which is that if this deck is just too much raw power and too fast, it's Mox Opal's fault. Or it's Urza's fault, but Urza's too sweet of a card, man.
I don't think it's Urza's fault. I mean, Urza's too...
It's not even really Urza's fault, because... Yeah, it's also not really Urza's fault, because at the end of the day, it's actually sort of the Meek's fault that Urza's even, like, in the conversation.
Yeah, like, nobody...
So, as a backstop, you always have sort of the Meek, Like, nobody
ever blames, Ugin or Karn. They talk about Tron. It's the mana
and nobody ever blames Stoneforge Mystic. They talk about Sylvok Lifestaff.
No. That's not... Actually, I think that's a great example of what I was talking about. Stoneforge Mystic is the engine and the mana cheating, same as Mox Opal and the Tron lands. Those are all the engine, and they're all the mana cheating.
You want a banner? Is this mine?
No, I don't want...
Oh, you want the tower. The tower was too much stronger than the others?
I'm just saying, like, that's what... It's like relating it to Urza. Urza's not the problem. Like, Urza's a forecasting cost 1/4. If he's not doing something exceedingly busto, he's not even... You don't live to turn 5 in Modern. Like, that's the thing. But he's fine. It's all the stuff going on around him that's potentially the problems. I also don't think that Stoneforge Mystic is an offensive card relative to the stuff they actually let you play right now.
No, everything here is so busted. All right, so Hogak, Faithless Looting, Mox Opal, and Ancient Stirrings?
Ancient Stirrings, yeah.
Is that our 4-pack?
I think it might need to go deeper.
You want to ban more out of Hogak, maybe?
I think that's a lot of cards already. I'm actually just trying to wrap my head around your Ren and 6 suggestion. I was about to go...
No, I don't think No, you shouldn't ban Ren and 6. No, I think you'd want to have Ren and 6 be a problem for a while. It might be years before Ren and 6 is a problem. Don't jump any conclusions there. I'm sympathetic, though. If you think that banning Hogak is not enough, I mean, Dredge was the best deck before Hogak came out.
Yeah.
Wait, we said Faithless Looting, right? Yeah, Hogak and Faithless Looting?
Yeah.
What else can you really do? None of the other cards are played in all the decks.
I'm doing a quick look. Well,
not everybody played Vengevine. Not everybody played Seder Wayfinder. Not everybody played Stitcher Supplier. Not everybody played.
None of those cards are even broken, right?
Right. I don't think there's anything. Like, what else can you really do besides ban Hogak and Faithless Looting?
Hey, man, you could ban Leyline of the Void. It was the most popular card in the tournament.
I don't think that would suppress the amount of Hogak decks, but
Same.
I mean, whatever.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, what's even the next option? Is it Bloodghast or something? I don't know, man.
Nobody's banning Bloodghast. So that's not going to happen.
Dude, I don't know. Is that Tria Tales? There's no other cards in the deck that everybody plays. You can build multiple different Hogak decks where the only overlapping cards are Faithless Looting and Hogak.
I understand that only PV and not, like Reed played the Altar. I understand you only played 2. I don't think the Altar promotes good Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, but I don't think it's actually good, particularly if you cut Hogak. Maybe it'll be okay eventually, but there's nowhere. That's not even close to the right spirit of this. I think Hogak and Faithless Looting are the only 2 realistic candidates. If you literally wanted to just be sure, if you wanted to Tria Tales these people, I guess Bloodghast is the common link, or Carrion Feeder. Probably Bloodghast. A lot of them don't even play Carrion Feeder. Just Bloodghast, I guess. The hell with it.
I think you have to ban Faithless. If you're going to ban, you ban Faithless Looting. If you're banning Faithless Looting, you got to take Ancient Stirrings. I think you have to take Hogak because it's cute to not take Hogak. Oh, if we take these cards away, then Hogak won't be a problem. You're just eventually going to print a card that makes Hogak a problem again. It's just Thopter Sword.
Dude, in the words of the immortal poet laureate Eric Lauer, interesting. It was the Delve card that was broken this time?
How many times did he have to run that one?
I think there's a bot that just repeats that quote every time they print a Delve card.
Like, do you remember when Gurmag Angler wasn't just like this super staple card in Modern? Before you played it, I think you were the one who busted it out.
Dude, there are almost no Delve cards that are not busted. Delve is a more busted mechanic than Storm, the way they costed it.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, everything... Mana cheating that doesn't, like, severely impact your card advantage is one of the strongest things in Magic.
The problem is they just costed the cards in a way in which it was agnostic. It was like they were like, okay, let's cost all the cards right and just pretend that fetch lands don't exist. And then it turns out that fetch lands do exist.
Oh, well, the other thing is like the ability, and I think this is probably a byproduct of the fetch lands, is like the ability to play whatever colors you want. Right?
Yeah, it's the fetch lands again.
Yeah, well, this only is a problem if we can have access to blue, right? Or this is only a problem if you have access to red. Well, just now your green deck has access to those things because of the fetch lands.
But all right, going forward, I guess in closing, I would play Hogak Dredge if every person at the tournament main deck Leylines. I would still play Hogak Dredge. If they only ban Hogak, I would test how good Hogak is still, but I could imagine playing Jund or Tron or Urza. If they ban just Faithless Looting, I'm still definitely playing Hogak. If they ban Faithless Looting and Hogak, then I think that there's just a decent chance of a problem with Tron or Thopter Sword. So I don't know. It's going to be tough. It'll be interesting to see what they do here, but I predict a bloodbath.
All right. I have one question to ask on the way out.
Yep.
What is Cheerios? Because that deck had a 35% win rate.
Yeah, Cheerios is just another combo deck. It's like picture eggs.
Yeah.
But like, it's never been good. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to unfairly characterize, but like it's when you have a million zeros and you got the guys that make your guys cantrip. You got like Pure Steel Power and SRAM.
you just play all the stuff and then pick up all the stuff, that deck?
Yeah. It's just the Cheerios are all the O's. Because you have like a million, exactly. You have a million zeros, and then you just, and it's okay. It's a one-trick pony. It's fast. It's really fast. But like, you gotta. I mean, I guess maybe the mulligan rule is really good for it, because if your deck doesn't function if you do not find either Pure Steel Paladin or SRAM, and if your guy gets countered or killed, that's, you don't have anything else. Like, you're kind of weak to Inquisition of Kozilek, Lightning Bolt, Fatal Push, Spell Snare.
Oh my gosh, I hate open deck lists so much.
I know, me too.
It's so bad. I mean, like, you can't even bluff. Right? Yeah. Like, the beauty of Magic is, like, you can look like one thing and then you just get them with something else because they misread you, but not with open deck lists. All right, Cheerios, 35%, doesn't sound good. Still 35% better than Bant Company. At 2 players, 0 wins. Not a good weekend for Bant Company.
Okay, dude. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, so jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind.